All eyes will be on Parliament in just a few short minutes from now as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be presenting the Union Budget for the year 2021. She's currently at the Finance Ministry and will leave shortly for the President's House. She will present the budget starting 11 a.m. on the dot, and as per schedule, it will go on for at least 2 hours till 1 p.m. Termed as one of the most pivotal union budgets owing to the coronavirus pandemic that led to the contraction of GDP for the first quarter by 23.9% last year. This year's budget will also witness a break away from tradition as it will be India's first ever paperless budget to minimize the possibility of the spread of the virus. Well, ahead of today's budget, Nirmala Sitharaman raised hopes as she said it will be a budget like never before. Experts speculate the budget will focus on strengthening the government's Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme to boost economic demand and stimulate growth. Remember, recovery and fight back are the big keywords going forward. Joining me live, I would like to introduce all of my guests this morning who are with us. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya is President of the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. Siddharth Modi is a private equity and venture capital expert. We also have with us Rajiv Dubey, who is editor of business at India Today and who's been looking at all of the indicators right through all of these weeks running up to this particular budget. In a moment, I will be introducing all of our other guests as well. I just want to tell all of our viewers that as we speak to our guests this morning, please look around your screen. As you look around your screen, in just a few minutes from now, you will be seeing action points, expectations, what we've already been given to believe is going to be in the budget. And then when the budget begins, this budget speech begins at 11, we'll tell you what is actually going to happen and what has been announced. So these are all action points. No gyan. We're going to give you what is actually there and how it affects you directly, sector-wise, taxes, salaries, benefits, all of that will be right here on India Today in the simplest way possible. I want to quickly get in, before I go to my guests, I want to quickly get you Aishwarya Paliwal, who's with me live from the Finance Ministry. Aishwarya, this is going to be Nirmala Sitharaman's third budget in effect. Has she left the Finance Ministry yet? 11 a.m. on the dot is when the speech begins.
No, Shiv, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, in fact, just a couple of minutes ago has entered the Finance Ministry, and this happens every year. This is a meeting which takes place where the Finance Minister meets with all the officials and the finer points are then discussed once again in detail, because before she goes and presents the budget, from what we are expecting just in a couple of minutes from now, she along with the MOS Anurag Thakur will be coming. They will be standing here. There will be no paper this time, but from what we understand, Nirmala Sitharaman will have some symbolic documents in her hand. She will be here for almost 2 to 3 minutes. That's where the photo session will take place, and then she will move on to the Rashtrapati Bhavan. This is a budget where everyone, all the corporates, everyone is now keenly looking at this budget. They expect the government to give a boost, give a fillip to the economy, because that's the need of the hour, Shiv.
Okay, a big boost to the economy is, the simplest way anyone can put it. Of course, that holds true for any budget, but this one more than ever, as Aishwarya put it. She's going to be leaving the Finance Ministry. Nirmala Sitharaman will be leaving the Finance Ministry in just a few minutes. She'll be headed to the President's House and then straight to Parliament, where there will be a cabinet meet. There will be a photo op outside Parliament with the, with the budget documents, and then we will see things take off from there. Rajiv, I want to quickly bring you in on this because, you and your team have been crunching the data, the numbers, the expectations from all corners of industry today, over the last few weeks and months. Is it any exaggeration, first of all, Rajiv, to say that this is perhaps the most crucial budget that India has seen in living memory, perhaps? Of course, there have been very important budgets in the 90s, but this one, given everything that India and the world have been through in the last, 10 to 11 months, this one is the big one.
Oh, without doubt, Shiv. I mean, for an economy that shrank 24%, one of the worst in among major economies in the first quarter, for it to get to a situation where instead of economists saying that India will shrink 10-11%, we are in a situation where it could shrink between 7 and 7.5%, maybe 8% at worst. As IMF is predicting, we've come a long way. And without doubt, this is, how we go from here, where we go from here is going to be decided by what Nirmala Sitharaman presents to the Parliament today and to the country. For me, the important thing to watch is the biggest problem in the economy right now is that there is a demand slump. And how is it that this budget is going to bring about an acceleration in demand and consumption in the economy? That is one big factor that we are looking at. The second major thing is, can we accelerate investment in healthcare and other infrastructure in a way that it leads to a generation of demand and consumption in the economy? That is the second major thing that we are looking at. The third is, how will we go from here in terms of tax collections and in terms of debt that the government is taking? Whether you already know that we had planned 7.8 lakh crore of debt. The debt this year is actually going to be 12 lakh crore. 4.2 lakh crore additional debt the government is going to be taking. Tax collections have fallen by about 25%. So this fiscal. So that is the other thing to watch out for. So biggest initiative that the government can take right now to bring us back into the positive territory as far as the economic growth is concerned, GDP growth is concerned, is to ensure that there is demand generation in the economy through investment in infrastructure. And as you know, that the other engines of the economy are practically non-functional. The exports today are lower than they were in 2013-14. Private investment is at a multi-year low. Consumption has tanked. So the push that is required at this point in time is to ensure that there is consumption triggered in the economy, which can be done through infrastructure development, more spending into infrastructure. And what we require is multiple times of the investment that we make on an annual basis. For instance, even in roads, we make about 83,000 crore of investment. We need 2-3 times of that for it to make any meaningful impact. And how will the government ensure that this can be kickstarted is going to be very critical to watch. How will we ensure that MSMEs do not crash in the economy is going to be very critical to watch. It will be important to see how we kickstart the services sector. We've been discussing since morning that we need to see the urban India participating in the growth that will happen from here on, because largely the growth is being delivered by rural India, and services sector participating in growth as opposed to the manufacturing sector that has been happening so far. So these are the multiple factors that we'll be watching to see how much of an impact this budget can make onto the economic landscape.
See, one thing that we can all agree on, apart from the fact that this is a crucial budget, which is almost needless to say anymore, but the fact is that expectations are also going to be exaggerated. Let's acknowledge that right at the start, because of everything that India, companies, individuals, citizens have been through, the expectations are therefore going to be exaggerated and large as well. So, it's just something to keep in mind as we head towards 11 a.m. when the budget speech starts. Also want to welcome onto our coverage SC Garg, who's a former finance secretary of the country. Mr. Garg, good morning to you. You're a man who's been on the inside. I mean, you've seen this whole process from the inside. We're looking at it from the outside. Here we've got live pictures of Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, emerging from North Block. Mr. Garg, if I could ask you, what is the mood usually like, when this is going on? Talk us over these pictures, because you've probably been there when this kind of thing has been happening. What's it been like? What is the mood like when you've got the expectations of 1 billion people on your shoulders and you're walking towards Parliament to present the budget? What are these pictures like?
See, the mood at this moment when the finance minister goes to the President House to brief the President of India, and also to take his permission to present the budget and the finance bill to the Parliament, is that we have done whatever we wanted to do. The budget is there. Everybody believes that a good job has been done to answer to the call of the economy, what is required what is in the best interest of the economy, and the people of India. So the mood is generally expectant and a feeling of satisfaction that we have done our duty and let us now take it to the people.
But wouldn't there be a palpable amount of anxiety at this point of time, because the entire nation's expectations are riding on Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman now, and the economic survey said that we are likely to see some sort of a V-shaped recovery. Most experts...
Sorry to interrupt, Chaiti, letting you finish your question, but just for a moment, just want to tell our viewers that that's a tablet in Nirmala Sitharaman's hand. That's not the usual budget documents. As you can see, it's very slim, quite stylish in that red envelope. That's a tablet. So paperless budget being taken to heart. So that's a tablet being carried by the finance minister. Go ahead, Chaiti.
Well, these are COVID times, and now we're all paperless. So we can see that with Nirmala Sitharaman carrying that tablet as well. It's going to be a paperless budget this time around. Mr. Garg, what I was talking to you about is there'll be a fair amount of anxiety. There'll be a fair amount of stress on this woman's shoulders, because, all eyes are going to be on the finance minister. The economic survey says there could be a V-shaped recovery of the economy, but most experts I've been speaking to are saying V-shape is not possible. It's going to be a K-shaped recovery, because if you see Q1 FY21, you saw a contraction of minus 23.9% of the GDP. Then you saw a minus 7.7%. They've done a great job, but to then say that we're expecting now for the year going forward 11% uptick, is that a little too much?
So first, to answer your sort of question, comment about the anxiety on the finance minister's mind, it is very true. It's a country of 130 crore people, and all of them expect something in the budget, and that is very, very difficult to answer for any finance minister. And therefore, the anxiety in the mind is always whether I have done a job which everyone finds there is something for him or her. And that is, the test is when you deliver, the kind of response it comes is what will answer that anxiety, right? So that is definitely the case. But as I was saying, the job is done. Whatever I wanted to say as finance minister is there in the documents. Nothing is going to be changed now. So that is the feeling that in our judgment, in my judgment, in the finance minister's judgment, we have done our best. To come to your question about the K-shaped or V-shaped recovery, you see, there is a lot of glamorizing about these kind of numbers and shapes. V simply means that you have fallen somewhere and then you are rising back to the normal. That is what the V is.
Yeah.
And since you fell 24% in the first quarter, and you're likely to contract by about 7 to 8% in the whole of year, the next year, even if you go back to the normal, to the ground level, it will be a V form. Right? So there's nothing really...
Right. As Rajiv was telling me earlier as well, when they say 11%, it is actually +2 because it's adjusted.
Right. And the K is answering a very different kind of phenomenon, which is very true.
That is the disparity we're talking about.
The K is where some people, some segment of the economy goes up drastically. You're not expecting them to grow, but they grow disproportionately high. And whereas there are a lot of other people who are the parts of the economy which actually go down. So when part of the economy goes down and part of the economy goes up, you have a K-shape kind of thing.
Sure.
We have both the situations in the country today. We have V-shaped recovery as far as the quarterly growth is concerned, and K-shaped recovery if you see the corporates profits going up very sharply in second quarter and also in the third quarter.
Sure.
But you see the labor and the wages losses, which is virtually the other strand of the K.
I also want to bring in, get some opening comments, as we get these live pictures. We're going to stay, our cameras are going to be trained on the finance minister in the run-up to this budget presentation that begins at 11 a.m. But Dr. Bhattacharya, to bring you in on your opening comments this morning on expectations, this is, expectations are going to be huge on this particular budget. It feels almost useless to say that because as Mr. Garg said, everyone is going to be expecting something for them personally here because of everything that's happened this year. No matter which sector you belong to, no matter where you dwell, no matter what kind of work you do or business you do, if you're an individual or a freelancer, it doesn't matter. you're going to be listening very, very closely to this budget. What are you going to be listening in for?
I think from an expectations perspective, it's been the same every year in that sense that we do want lowered taxes for sure. We want rationalization of taxes and we want more expenditure from the government. And those are kind of contradictory requirements because when we want the lower taxes, how does the government end up spending? But my expectation will be, a few more very fundamental infrastructural changes that can be brought in. And by infrastructure, I mean, bringing in the bad bank concept in, ensuring that there is more funds being allocated for job creation, some interventions from the startup side, because startups has brought in about 50 to 60 billion dollars of investment during the COVID time. And if you can rationalize things like angel tax, I think those detailed interventions are what is expected. And I would really look forward to the details of what the budget brings out, because overall it'll be very, very similar to any other budget in the sense there will be something for agriculture, for farmers, for rural areas, for the stressed sector, hopefully for tourism and travel and so on. But it's the details that I'm really looking forward to, and especially our expectations have been heightened because of the statements from the finance minister that this will be a very, very different kind of a budget. So I'm curious to know how it will be different from the previous years. And I think
it's
that
to
difference
go into the economy as well, and definitely there is going to be a situation where the government is going to be missing the fiscal deficit target as a percentage of the GDP as well. Are you then of the opinion that don't worry about the fiscal deficit targets, even if you're widening that, it's all right, but ensure that there is enough amount of expenditure that takes place and money in the hands of the end consumer?
No, absolutely. This is not an ordinary year. This is an extraordinary year, and we need to take extraordinary steps. So at least for this year, for sure, I don't think we need to stick to the fiscal deficit. There's nothing sacrosanct about the fiscal deficit, as I've been, always mentioning. And especially in a developing economy, it's important that we fund the growth in the economy through deficit funding. And therefore, breaching the fiscal deficit for this year is not a bad thing at all. It's quite a welcome thing. And I'd say the same thing for last year's budget also, that it's okay if we breached the fiscal deficit target from 3.3 to 3.7, 3.8%. It's all okay, as long as we bring back a trajectory of gliding back to our target fiscal deficit by next year and next year. But this year, for sure, it's an emergency step that we need to take, and I expect and would actually encourage a very significant breaching of the fiscal deficit target.
Okay. Again, Nirmala Sitharaman there with the tablet, moving out from the finance ministry, headed towards the president's house, where she's going to be briefing the president. Then she heads to the Parliament House, where there will be a quick cabinet meeting before the budget speech begins at 11 a.m. It's expected to continue for about 2 hours. Quickly introducing our other guests who are joining us this morning, who've given us their time. They're going to be talking us through the budget, and after the budget, going to be breaking it down in very, very simple terms. So very happy to have with us. SC Garg continues to be with us. Mihir Sharma, good morning. Senior journalist, columnist and author of Restart, The Last Chance for the Indian Economy. Sanjeev Ahluwalia, advisor of the Observer Research Foundation. Shankar Iyer, political economy analyst, author and senior journalist. Ajay Veer Jakar, chairman of the Bharat Krishak Samaj. So welcome to all of you. Good morning. Very exciting day, but also a great deal of anxiety about what lies ahead as far as this budget is concerned. Shankar, if I could come to you first. Expectations is a word that's thrown around so much that it's lost a lot of its potency. It's difficult to overstate how crucial this particular budget is, given everything that's happened over the last 10 to 11 months. But break down for us in maybe 3 to 4 points what the big thrust areas you see as far as expectations are concerned that would make you think of this as a potent, successful, necessary budget.
Well, the expectations depend on where you are geographically. In Mumbai, they want you to cut all taxes and spend more money. In Delhi, they want a different set of expectations are there. So essentially what it boils down to is that the government has done whatever it could do in the last 10 months for people to survive. What the budget is expected to do is to present a case for how people will thrive. And since money makes the economy go round, my focus and my curiosity is how the government is going to fix the problem in the financial sector The Reserve Bank of India has said that NPA levels would touch 13.5%, which sort of is a humongous number. You know that a large number of borrowers and lenders, their relationship is under induced coma. So we need to know how that pans out. To me, how they fix a problem that they have struggled to fix for over 4 or 5 years is critical.
Yeah.
And the rest of the story will pan out in a sense. The budget itself in its numbers may be understated, the potential, and much of it will depend on how we fix the vaccine program and how the economy, the engagement in the economy happens.
Right. So while those are the priorities of the budget, I want to bring in Mihir Sharma, columnist and author of Restart, the Last Chance for the Indian Economy, on this particular point. Mihir, we are hearing a lot on give a fillip to infrastructure, to agriculture, to healthcare, to SMEs, to MSMEs. All of these are expansionary policies on the expenditure side. In terms of the revenue side as well, outside of the taxable revenue, where do you see the non-taxable revenue being raised by the finance minister? Because the big concern here today is you need to have an expansionary budget, but to be able to support it on the revenue side, we aren't seeing much outside the taxable revenue.
Well, I think that that's going to be a major problem going forward, because we've already seen in the past year that the government has been unable to meet its ambitious disinvestment targets. And in spite of the fact, I think we should mention that the stock market has not done badly at all. But they still didn't.
Flying.
Yes, but they still didn't put things out in the, they still didn't float some of the other companies as they promised they would. And the other issue, of course, being that they have already raised market borrowing considerably over the past year, so they're not going to be happy about borrowing. In terms of revenue, she's going to be facing a very, very difficult task, and I think there's really no alternative to looking at some form of tax rationalization.
Yeah, and since you mentioned the markets, I just want to bring our attention of the viewers. The markets have opened, and they've opened in the green. They're trading at about 46,593 levels. That's the Sensex. Nifty is trading at about 13,715 levels, up 0.6 thereabout percent. Same for the Sensex as well. So these are the benchmark indices opening on a positive start this morning as well. And Mihir, while I was asking the question on the revenue side as well, in terms of the expenditure, we're seeing a lot of priority being given to many sectors like the agriculture or infrastructure or healthcare for that matter. But the question is, which according to you should be an important spend in terms of national interest? For you, would it be defense in the light of what is going on with the India-China conflict? Would it be healthcare in the light of the coronavirus pandemic?
Look, I think that defense is a major longer-term problem. We have reached very low levels of spending per GDP on defense, but this year it's going to look good, right? Because the GDP itself, the denominator has fallen. So suddenly we're going to move from 1.5 or 1.6% of GDP on defense to something much higher. And maybe they'll make a point of mentioning that it's looking good this year. But I think that no, in the end, you have to make sure that your vaccine rollout is fully funded. You have to be focusing on healthcare, and you have to be focusing on ensuring that SMEs, which are the employment generators, are getting the kind of financing they need. These are the ways that you revive the economy. That's the only way to go forward.
Sanjeev Ahluwalia, how are you? Healthcare, obviously a really, really big priority sector. Defense as well, as Mihir just pointed out. Do you think, given the constraints that the government has been under, what kind of announcements are you expecting to see, or would you be satisfied with going forward in the healthcare sector?
I think actually the heavy lifting is already behind the FM. The FM did all the heavy lifting silently, as opposed to some other countries which went to the pulpits to shout about their accomplishments all through the year that we're still going through. She's done a remarkable job with expenditure management. She selected 10 ministries, which are the priority ministries, which will continue to remain the priority ministries next year also. And these are the ministries that do basically two tasks. One, ensure health security and help in assisted healing. Why assisted healing? Because the economy is healing on its own. As soon as you start unlocking the economy, as soon as you start unlocking people's minds, behaviors will change. The vaccine will bring behavior back to exactly what it was. Here we are, you know, sitting out here on the 1st of Feb, all of us unmasked, pretty close to each other, and yet doing the show, right? This is how fast behaviors change. So I have no doubt that, and you see the results in December already. Revenue is roaring back. Revenue will continue to roar back in television breaking news terms simply because people are starting to go about what they do normally. So these 10 ministries will remain the focus. Rural development, agriculture, of course, finance, defense, and health.
And now, since you mentioned agriculture, you know, the context of when this budget is happening obviously can't be ignored. The fact that the farmer protests are still on, they've been reignited, re-energized. Ajay Jakar, to get your view in on this, you know, there appears to be still a deadlock. There's been a lot of unpleasantness recently. The Prime Minister has also reached out recently and said dialogue is still possible. So, you know, that is happening. But as far as agriculture is concerned, you've got the farm laws on the one side, and then you've got expectations as far as agriculture on the other side. What's your take there?
First of all, farm laws have nothing to do with a budget session.
Of course.
I mean, with the budget.
No, I was only talking about the context.
So I really think the government needs to do more than what they have done. They need to walk the talk. And I'll give you a few examples. The government is focusing, because financial institutions, business associations, banking sector, they all talk about infrastructure. I think human capital is something that the government should be focusing on. And the government is focused on infrastructure. That's the wrong approach to take. The priority has to be human capital before infrastructure. And human capital investment is just like 5% of infrastructure spend, and the government is not doing that. The expenditure on agriculture, research and education over the last 10 years has reduced every year from 0.31% of GVA, it's come down to 0.25% last year, and let's see what the budget shows this year. So, you know, you need different kind of priorities. You need to increase the quantum of money for PM Kisan. You need to add agriculture labor, tenants. You need to find ways to do that. And the last thing is on food inflation. You know, the government is fixated on reducing inflation, but that is being done in a way that costs farmer livelihoods. And diesel is a cost, diesel is a tax. Diesel is taxed in such a high proportion today that it's adding to food inflation. Now, rather than reduce taxes on diesel, the government will ensure that farm gate prices don't rise.
And I just want to add a point before you take a break, Shiv. Like Ajay just mentioned that farm laws have nothing to do with the budget, but the fact is that it impacts the appetite of the government now to bring more reforms in, given the kind of pushback that they've seen.
I absolutely. That was the context I meant.
No, I absolutely agree with you. The government didn't see, like I said, the government is fixated on the outcome. They should be focusing on the process of getting those laws. The government messed up in the process. And that's why this crisis of confidence in the government is there today. And it's the government's responsibility to end the crisis. You know, it's always the more powerful, it's the big brother who needs to reach out to those ones below and do that.
It's going to be interesting to see, you know, what that context and how it impacts some of the announcements made as far as the agriculture sector is concerned in this. Because like Chaiti said, the appetite for reform, you know, whichever way it goes, it's been impacted. So we'll have to see what